Mesech Horayos the Vav Amid Beis. We're starting from the second Perek Sheni. It's called Hoyda Koyin HaMashiach, the second Perek. Had and Allah Hoyda Bezdin. We finished. We will return to the first Perek of Hoyda Bezdin. Zog the Mishnah. Okay. Here, everybody's here. Zog the Mishnah. Hoyda Koyin HaMashiach. Koyin HaMashiach means a Koyin Gadol. If the Kohen Gadol paskin erroneously, meaning he paskin wrong, and Chaylev that's also, he said it's mutter, la'atzmoi, for himself, and he did it, b'shegig, he did the avei on his own, and he did it, also shegig, then areza maybe par. Then the halach is he has to bring a par for a chatas. But what's if he was No, he's different. Kohen Mashiach is like a tzibur that brings a par. Zok the Gemara now, what's if he was a shoygig in the psak? He made a mistake in the psak, but we'll also amaze it. He found out in the middle that what he paskin was wrong, that the chaylev that he said is mutter is really asa, and nevertheless he ate it but amazed it, knowing that it's asa and he ate it. Then the halacha is that he's going to be potter. We're soon going to see. Or mazit, or he was amazed that he knew that the chaylev is asa, and he paskin that the chaylev is mutter. He was amazed. But the asa, he didn't want to eat the chaylev. He wanted to eat shuman. Even though he paskin that chaylev is mutter, but that's not what he wanted to eat. He wanted to eat shuman, and by mistake he ate the chaylev b'shoigeg. So from that second potter, he's still going to be potter from a carbon. Why? We're going to have a limit from the pasuk that in order for a kohen gadol to be chayiv, sai the hoyra has to be the b'shoigeg, and sai his actions have to be b'shoigeg. If one of them is amazing, then he doesn't bring a par, which the par is called par helam dava. Par helam dava. Right. He don't. No, it's not a kapara. He can't be forgiven. He's amazing. Then okay, shahidas koyin mashiach la'atzmai kehidas bezin letzibur, because the hidah of a koyin gadol that paskins for himself, and then he does the in action has a din like by yatzibur, just like by yatzibur. I'm just going to finish off. Just like by yatzibur, you need both. Side the hidah zol zayin b'shoigeg, the hidah is bezin, and side the tzibur will do it b'shoigeg. But yeah, but that's how he does bezdin with the tzibur. Here we're talking about the kohen mashiach paskin fazich alein, and then the kohen gadol, and he does. So his hoyra and his ma'isa have to both be b'shoigeg, just like by a tzibur. So the Gemara shoigeg v'asa shoigeg. But it's the same thing. Kohen mashiach has the same dinim, same tanoim as a tzibur. So you want to shoygeg v'asa shoygeg. We learned in the Mishnah if he was a shoygeg, and meaning his psak was a shoygeg, and his ma'isa v'asa shoygeg. His ma'isa was a shoygeg. Maybe par that he brings a par. Frankly, what a pshita. It's some fashtan. What does he come to teach us? If he is a shoygeg, it's all a shoygeg. Yeah, it's same. But even the stam a shoygeg brings a carbon. He was a mamash a shoygeg through and through. Over here is talking about going shahida. That the kohen mashiach he get mapsak and b'shakach, and he forgot to re-meizer tam hoida. He forgot for what reason. What was the reason behind that he gave the psak chaylev his mutter? And at the time that he made a mistake, and when he was about to do that to eat chaylev, he says, "I'm going to falozich. I'm going to rely on the psak that I gave. I don't remember the reason. Chaylev is mutter, and that's how he did it." I would have thought now if he would have been aware of the reason why he said chaylev is mutter, maybe before he actually does the eats the chaylev, and he would have known the reason, he would have retracted. So therefore, I should say he's like amazing, because it's stam falasich, he relied on his reasoning from the originally, but now he doesn't remember. So what's his fault? Okay, so but he should have gone into what's the reason, and if he would have known the reason, we're saying if he would have before his action figured out what the reason.
He forgot, right?
He knew he forgot. He doesn't know the reason. He said, I'm going to rely on the reasoning that I had before. But if he would have gone through the reasoning again before he does the action, he would have been more careful.
So
Before somebody does an action, he checks it over again. He probably would have retracted. And therefore, I would say he's considered as a mason and shouldn't be chayiv. Kamash comes Gemara teaches us he's chayiv. Zog the Gemara. We also learned in the Mishnah if he gave the psak, then Mezi, he knew it was wrong. He came up with some baba ma'aser that chaylev is mutter, and then when it came to do the aveda, he was a shegi. He wasn't going to eat the chaylev. He was going to eat shuman, and then he ended up eating chaylev. So he still doesn't bring a carbon because he was amazed in the psak. From where do we learn this out? That at the side the hayra, the psak that he gave had to be b'shogeg, and side when he did the ma'aser had to be b'shogeg. So the Rabbanan, because in the Rabbanan in the pasuk it says, "Imakoyin Mashiach yechta le'ashmas ha'am." What's le'ashmas ha'am? If the kohen will sin, le'ashmas ha'am means that if a kohen sins, a kohen has to be able to forgive for Klal Yisrael. I'm saying partial to B'shad. So it's really, if he did he has to forgive for everybody. Lashmas Am means that if he did an Aveda, he can't forgive righteously for the Am. So it's really, his Aveda is Lashmas Am, as Shuldi, he can't, because Kol Am Tluyim Bay, Lechapa Aleim, Ulispaya Ba'adam. But once he sins, it says Nasim Ekulkal, Azay Shvek Nashi. So it says, but that's the Pashna Pshat. Here means Lashmas Am, means that he's like the tzibur listens to Bezdin. Hare Mashiach kitzibur, to tell us that a par of a Kohen Gadol has all the same dinim as by a Bezdin that passes for a tzibur. And just like when a Bezdin passes for a tzibur, sai zeir psak, their psak had to be a shogeg, and sai their ma'aser had to be a shogeg. We say those same dinim applied by the Kohen Gadol. That say he has to pass him for himself b'shegeg, and his mice has to be b'shegeg. In fact, you wonder why? Why do I need a passing of that? So we can learn now from the binyan of how you say like this: Tzibur mutz meklal. Tzibur is I'm sorry, Tzibur mutz meklal that din chatas of yochid, meaning that the yochid brings a kizba or seira, but a tzibur brings a par. So Yachid is not like a tzibur; it's excluded from tzibur. Mashiach mutz miklal. Mashiach is also mutz miklal Yachid. He's also excluded from a Yachid because a kohen Mashiach, a kohen gadol, when he sins, avodah zarah l'mashal, he has to bring a par. Versus a Yachid brings a kizba v'sayir. So since they have in common that they bring the same carbon, and they're both excluded from a yachid, so I'll say just like a tzibur, he's only chayiv on helam dava im shigigas ma'aser. Helam dava means that says nelam givodim the real psak, and they gave the wrong psak, and im shigigas ma'aser means that the Klal Yisrael followed their psak b'shoigig. So too at Mashiach la yehi chayiv al helam dava im shigigas ma'aser. So too, a Kohen Gadol will only be chayiv if the psak was a shogeg and his ma'aser was a shogeg. Says Gemara, Oy Shema. No, maybe you can't prove that it's compared to a tzibur because klach lederzu nasi mutzim meklal yachid. You can say just like a nasi is excluded from a yachid also. How? But because by when it comes to a nasi, it says he brings a yachid brings a kizba or a siddur lechatas, right? A nasi brings he's included in im nafs shachas sechatot, that's for sure. Okay, but he's not going to be chayiv asoyer. He's only going to be chayiv a kizba. He's not going to be chayiv.
So he's like a yochid. So what's the difference?
What? No, he's going to be chayiv a soyer in addition to a kizba. I'm sorry. In addition to a kizba, the nasi has to bring a. In addition to a kizba, he has to bring a soyer. One second. Mashiach mutzmikal yachid. A Mashiach is also different in the covenant that it brings a par. So man nasi maybe b'shigas ma'isa b'lei helam dava. So now they're both excluded from a yachid. A yachid has to bring a kizba or se'ira. A nasi brings no, not a par, but a nasi brings, in addition to kizba, he brings a se'ira. He's more. Here it says, "Vayitzi akas min hakol chai v'soyer." Here, here's the pasuk. V'im nefesh achas sechta b'shgocha chayiv yachid lahavi kizba se'ira lechatas. And a nasi brings a kizba. He has to be chayv. He's chayv a kizba for sure. In addition to the seira, if it's avodah zara. Okay, so and a Mashiach brings a par. So they're both not bringing like a yachid. They're both excluded from yachid.
Different. Everybody's different.
They're both different. They're talking not the same carbon, but they don't. But they don't bring the same. They don't bring as much. Manasi, maybe so we're comparing it. What we're comparing now Mashiach to Nasi, just like a Nasi is excluded from Yachid, that he brings a kizba, and Mashiach versus a Yachid brings a se'ida or kizba, just one, but there he brings in addition a kizba, and the same thing a Mashiach, meaning doesn't bring the same carbon as a yachid, which is kizba seida. He brings a par. So we can compare. Both of them are excluded from yachid, and just like by nasi, you don't need to have that the psak should be b'shegeg. All you need is shigegas ma'isa. You don't need both noyim. The psak should be b'shegeg and the ma'isa should be b'shegeg. Mashiach maybe b'shegas ma'isa. So I'm going to tell you, maybe the kohen gadol could also have only one of the tnaim. Shigegas ma'isa is enough. He doesn't have to have that the psak should be b'shegeg. So you can learn it either way. You can either learn Mashiach is compared to tzibur, and if it's compared to tzibur, you need both tnaim. You need side the Horayos zayin b'shegeg and side the ma'isa zayin b'shegeg, or you can compare it to nasi that you only need one of them. Neither me there. Let's see. Kohen Mashiach, to what is it more similar to tzibur or to nasi? Talking about a tzibur b'par. A tzibur is chuppah with a par. But they don't bring Asham Toli. If the Bezdin was mesupik in the psak, there's no such a thing bringing Asham Toli. Mashiach b'par. And Mashiach is also a par, maybe Asham Toli. So it has two dinim that it has a Kohen Gadol has similar to a tzibur in two dinim. They both bring the same carbon of par versus a yachid brings kizbu sida, and they both don't bring Asham Toli versus a yachid does. And just like a tzibur is not chayiv unless you have both shogeg. Side the Horayos Bezdin there was a helem, there was a shogeg, and side the ma'isa was a shigegas. So too, only if they were both b'shogeg, the psak and the ma'isa. Or you could say no. Well, compared to nasi, how? Because nasi maybe seida. If nasi brings a seida by avitzge chaven, or maybe asham vadai, and it also brings asham vadai. On avidus that the Torah was mechayiv only, so it brings asham vadai. So to Mashiach maybe seida, it brings a seida if it was shogeg by avitzge chaven, or maybe asham vadai, and it also brings asham vadai only on avidus. What? Yeah, kohen gadol. So you can learn Kohen HaMashiach from Nasi. Man Nasi, maybe B'shigas Maisa, Mashiach, maybe B'shigas Maisa, even though there's no Helam Dava, even though there was no Shogeg in the Psak HaBezdin.
They're both similar in what?
It's similar that they both bring Se'ira. If there was Shogeg B'avitzi Chavim, it's a par also, but par and a Soyer. So does a Nasi, a Melech.
Nasi also brings a par.
A par and a Soyer by Aveda Zara. By Aveda Zara, by the sin of Aveda Zara. Okay, and they bring up Asham Vadai. On the Avedis that you chayiv Asham, you bring the such a thing as Asham Vadai. What's the case of Asham Vadai? I can tell you in a second. Let me see if he brings down a case.
The Nasi brings a Se'irim, and also brings
in addition to a par, yeah.
Where does it say par?
Because it says when they came out from the Churban, you remember?
A Nasi brings a par?
A nasi, a par, and a soyer. It says Hasham Gzelis is considered as a Hasham Vadai. And that's the case of Hasham Vadai. Hasham Gzelis, or you have Hasham Ilis. If somebody had enough from Hegdish, it's not a Chatos, it's called a Hasham. Hasham Vadai, Hasham Ilis. Mila meant as met Yahat Ano, Zoro had enough from Hegdish. Or by Gzelis, somebody in Gazel. It's not a Chatos, it's called Hasham Gzelis, Hasham Mila. Okay. Okay, Zakti Mara Talmud Leima. So comes the pasuk therefore and teaches us what is Kohen Mashiach going to be compared to? La'ashmas ha'am. La'ashmas ha'am means to a tzibur. Harehu Mashiach kitzibur. That means since it says by Kohen Mashiach yachta, and he ends off the pasuk la'ashmas ha'am. La'ashmas ha'am is extra to tell us that it has the same din as a tzibur doing an aveda based on the psak of Bezdin's erroneous psak. Arehu Mashiach kitzibur. So you see from the pasuk that we compare Mashiach to tzibur. Ma tzibur maybe I'll help them Mashiach smaisa. Just like a tzibur has to have both noyim, that the Bezdin has to pasuk b'shegeg, and the people have to be shaking their ma'asaf. Mashiach and maybe I'll help them Mashiach smaisa. So let us say. Ma tzibur, just like by tzibur, hoida, if the Bezdin Hagadol, but paskin that it's one of the sunim is mutter, that Yechayiv Kores, v'asa acharav b'heirasei, and the tzibur followed suit. They did like the Bezdin had paskin. Chayavim par helam dava. That who's chayav par helam dava? Bezdin, right? Af Mashiach, according to Abmeya, af Mashiach kishahoida, so too Mashiach. Kohen Gadol, when he paskins had to one of the Yisurim, but also, and the Tzibur listen to the Kohen Gadol, let the Kohen HaMashiach be Chayiv also Pahalim Dava. If you're comparing it to Ashmas Ha'am, so just like by a Bezdin paskins wrong, and the Tzibur follows, the Bezdin has to bring a Pahalim Dava, so too, if a Kohen paskin wrong and the Tzibur follows, they should bring a Pahalim Dava. No, the Kohen Gadol. Talmud Leimer comes the pasuk and tells us by Kohen Mashiach that he could only bring a par for his own sin. Amar shachata on what he sinned himself, who maybe, but he doesn't bring a par helam dava if achedim listen to him. Omar, we learned in the Braisa Mashiach is miskaper one bepar. With a par, if on Shoygig Vadois, but Ein maybe Asham Tali, and he doesn't bring Asham Tali. Kohen Mashiach does not. No, like in fact, one from what is the Tana? No, the Ein maybe Asham Tali. That a Kohen Mashiach doesn't bring Asham Tali. And the Gemara said by Asham Tali, it says V'chipa Allah Kohen Al Shigigase Asher Shogak. It says a double lashon. Shigigase Asher Shogak. What's this double lashon? To tell you that a chiv Asham Tali is only chal mishachatase v'shigigase Shabbat. Only in somebody a person being the chatas, only if his ma'isa was b'shegeg, but not the hira. Yatsa Mashiach she'ein shigigase v'chatase Shabbat. To exclude a kohen Mashiach that he doesn't bring a chatas on shigigah ma'isa lachud, he has to also have a psak that he gave b'shegeg. The chsiv la'ashmas ha'am, because by a Kohen Mashiach it says b'feirish that he has a din like a tzibur, and by a tzibur you have to have both side the hira the helem, meaning b'shegeg, and side the ma'isa b'shegeg. Harehu Mashiach kitzibur. Mashiach is like a tzibur that you need both. So that's how we know that the Kohen Gadol does not bring a asham tali, because it says shigigase. It says the lashon kefil lashon shigigase asher shogak. So in fact, the Gemara la'ashmas ha'am, you bring me a raya from la'ashmas ha'am that Mashiach is compared to tzibur. In fact, the Gemara hatkan lo kamalei. We never spoke at this stage yet. We never brought at this stage, meaning in the Braisa before, that we compare Kohen Mashiach to tzibur from the pasuk of la'ashmas ha'am. We're still contemplating is not maybe Nasi's compared to a tzibur. Because just like a Nasi doesn't, I'm sorry, not a Nasi, Mashiach brings a par instead of a Kizbah Yisirav, just like a Tzibur does, that Yadam bring. So we should compare it to tzibur, or maybe we should compare it to nasi. That one of the two should be good. And it says Gemara about Asham Tali. Asham Tali only comes after you have La'ashmas Ha'am. Once you're learning out from the pasuk La'ashmas Ha'am that a Mashiach, the Kohen Mashiach has a din like a tzibur. So then you have to have a pasuk that by Kohen Mashiach, from where do we know that he's not going to be chayiv on a Asham Tali? From Shigagose Asher Shogag. But we didn't get there yet. We didn't learn out yet from La'ashmas Ha'am at that stage. Allah says, you're right. Asham K'di Nazba. Asham, he wasn't asking about, from where do we know that a Kohen Gadol is not going to be chayiv by a Asham Toli? That's not what his question was. His question was, from where do we learn out that a Kohen Gadol is compared to Mashiach? Because you can compare it to Tzibur, you can compare it to Nasi. Where do you know that to compare it more to Kohen Mashiach? Kohen or Nasi. Nasi is a melech. Kohen Mashiach means the Kohen Gadol. Kohen Gadol can be compared to a Nasi, or Kohen Gadol can be...
Like a tzibur you want to bring out, though, right?
Yeah, how do you know it's compared to a tzibur? Because you could learn it both ways, and that's how we came to the conclusion La'ashmas Ha'am. But we never asked about Asham Toli. Zagi Mishnah, Hoida b'fnei atzmei, if the Kohen Mashiach paskin for himself. Bezdin was mata for the tzibur, one iser, and he was mata for himself a different iser. L'mashal, Bezdin was mata chaylev, and he was mata avodah zarah. Here, Barashi Kosav Dugma, again, Shabezdin hitiru chaylev l'tzibur, v'hu hitil ha'atzmei avodah zchichavim. Yeah. Beida apart. It's the same carbon. It says by both you bring apart. So he says for us b'fnei atzmai that Tzibur did what the Bezdin was mata to them, and he did what he was mata to himself. Miskapa loy b'fnei atzmai. He doesn't become miskapa. He's not forgiven with the Bezdin bringing apart helam dava for the Tzibur. Even though he also did a Aveda that has the same carbon, he's not miskapa because his Aveda that he did wasn't totally bebezdin. The Kohen Gadol. Okay? But if the Kohen Gadol was ima tzibur, he paskin together with the tzibur, meaning the same Isa, they both paskin mutter, right? So then, and he did the Aveda together with the tzibur, he ate the chaylev, that they both passing him and the Bezdin passing that it's mutter, miskapeloi matzibur. Then he's forgiven together with the tzibur. Shein Bezdin chayavim. Another din. Shein Bezdin chayavim acheyedu levat mixes lakai mixes. Another din we had it before, but here's the mucker. The only time that the tzibur is going to be chayiv, if Bezdin was not oika whole mitzvah. L'mashal in avodah zarah, they said you're not allowed to do avodah zarah. But booking sich to avodah zarah, you're allowed about. The detail. So, or we brought with Nida, with Yom Keneged Yom, but not to uproot. The only time, what kind of a psak, if the tzibur followed, will Bezdin have to bring a pahelam dava? Only if they weren't Eika whole mitzvah. Only if they were Malaka part of the mitzvah. And so too, the Mashiach, Kohen Mashiach, only when will be Chayv a pahelam, a par for his Aveda, if he was mavata part of a mitzvah, not the whole mitzvah. The loy. No. Now we're talking about a new detail. That another detail in when does a Bezdin bring a pahalam dava on their erroneous psak? Only if they weren't mavata, they didn't uproot a whole mitzvah. The loy ba'avitzchacham achayedu levato mixes lakai mixes, and ba'avitzchacham also because avitzchacham is a whole new category. Avitzchachamim brings a par v'soyer. It's more in addition to the par they bring a soyer, so it's a different category. So he's telling you in avodah zarah also you can uproot the whole isur of avodah zarah and say it's mutter in order to be chayva payalam davar. How do we know that the Kohen HaMashiach is miskapa with the tzipur when they both testify, when they both paskin the same way? They're turning up on because he paskin on his own. Maybe it should be separate. It's not totally bebezdin. So if you want to turn up on Yeah, but it doesn't matter. They were paskening separately. So why should be? It had to be. He had to do the Haveda based on the Bezdin, but here he didn't do based on his Bezdin. He did it based on himself. So how do we know that he's going to be beskaper with the Parhelim Dava of the Bezdin? The Tanya Abanan, if the Kohen HaMashiach ima tzibur, paskin with the tzibur, meaning with the Bezdin, and he did the Haveda with the tzibur, Yachel Yavi Palatz. I would have thought he should have to bring his own par, right? V'dinhu, and the din is that he should be miskapet with the tzibur. He says, because Nasi mutzim eklau yachid. We know Nasi was included with a yachid because it's a Nasi is one person. That's mechayiv a yachid to bring a kizba oisid lechatas, and the pasuk took it out of the klal that by a Nasi he brings a soyer. And not a sawyer. I'm not sure if it's a sawyer together with a kizbo or just a sawyer. Kohen HaMashiach is also excluded from a yachid because a yachid brings a kizbo seira, and the Kohen Gadol brings a par. So they're both excluded from yachid. So I would say man nasi chat b'fnei atzmei maybe b'fnei atzmei, just like by a nasi amelech. If he sins. And if he sins himself, he brings a chatas for his sin. And if he sinned with the tzibur together, he did the aveda together with the tzibur. He's mechuper with the pahalam dava of the bezdin, or the nasi himself made a psak also. So too by the Kohen HaMashiach, I would say if he sinned on his own, he brings on his own. Because we can learn out with a binyan av, just like by Nasi, so too by Kohen HaMashiach. Says Gemara Loi, you cannot, because we learn out from a pasuk. That's what he's trying to say. Here it's a little funny because he doesn't first bring the pasuk from where we learn out that Kohen HaMashiach is miskaper with the bezdin. Only later on the Gemara will bring a pasuk. Now he's asking, even before they bring the pasuk, why do we need to bring later the pasuk if we can learn it out with a binyan out for Nasi? That's his kasha. Says Gemara Loi, we cannot learn it out for Nasi. Imamat ben Nasi, I'll tell you, Shekem Eskapa Loi Imat B'Yamaki put in. Nasi is, if he doesn't have it together with the tzibur, it makes sense that he should be mechuper with the par helam dava of the bezdin. Why? Because just like by Yom Kippur, he becomes mechuper the Nasi on the same Aveda of Tumas Migdash Ukdash. If he went into the base of Migdash while he was Tamei, right? Or he ate something or he touched something, or he ate something that was Tamei. So the Nasi is mechuper with that same behema, which is brought as a kapara of the tzibur. The Nasi is also. Tema b'Kohen HaMashiach, Kohen HaMashiach needs a separate carbon. Rather, when it comes to the Kohen Gadol, for that same Aveda of Migdash Ugdashav, if he came in Tamei, he has to bring a separate kapara. He's not mechuper. He has to bring a separate part for himself and the Kahanim. So, I will say, since he's not forgiven together with the tzibur when it comes to Yom Kippur, so I would say the Yachel, if he sinned together with the tzibur, he's also not going to be forgiven. Yachel Yavi Pala Atzmai. I would have thought that he has to bring a part for himself, a separate carbon. Talmud Lema. Here's the pasuk where it tells you that a Kohen Gadol is miskaper with the tzibur. Talmud Lema v'hika chatase asher chota. Meaning, only on a chet that he sinned on his own does he have to bring his own carbon. That's what the pasuk is emphasizing. Al chatos asher chota, only chatos soy. But if it was with the tzibur, he's forgiven. Okay, so im chatem b'fnei atzmi, maybe b'fnei atzmi, chatem l'atzibur miskaper loi, then he becomes forgiven together with the tzibur. How is it talking about here? The Kohen HaMashiach was the dayan mufla. The Heimen the Flying Pshita Miskapa Loy B'fnei Atzmai. There's a halacha that Bezdin, even if they make a wrong psak, they won't bring a parla helam dava because they have to have the mufla there. Mufla, Rashi says, is the Rosh Hashiva, the head of the Sanhedrin. So even a erroneous psak, if they made it, but without asking, without the Rosh Hashiva being there, they don't bring a par helam
He
dava.
has to agree.
He has to be there, or he has to
sign
agree. They have to ask him. Yeah. So who's the mufla there? Says the Gemara. If you're going to say the mufla was the Kohen Gadol, and they were not the mufla in the
off.
Bezdin,
Kohen Gadol was part of the Bezdin.
obviously he was part of the Bezdin. He wasn't there because they was in separate places. And then not muflayim says Gemara pshita the miskaper loy b'fnei atzmei. Hayrad lohein and loy klum. Their haydah is nothing because they didn't have without him. They didn't have him. So only his haydah, the Kohen Gadol,
So he needs his egg.
yeah, he needs his eigna, his own kapara, because they don't have to bring a par because they didn't have the Rosh Hashiva. Everybody, all the tzibur that followed the wrong psak, being that they didn't have a mufla, it's not considered Heido Bezdin. It's like each person individually made their own aveda, and each person now has to bring their own carbon, and they cannot rely on a Bezdin's pahelam dava. Yeah, a kisvei seder. The inen mufloy, and if you're going to say that the Bezdin Hagadol had the mufla there, they had muflaim of their own, they had Rosh Hashiva of their own. V'hu and the Mashiach la mufla, he wasn't the Rosh Hashiva. Abai miskapel b'fnei atzmai. How could it be forgiven for on himself? Hayirah didei v'lo klumi. His hayirah aveis doch gar nicht. So it was, why should he bring up Pahalam Dava if he doesn't know what he's talking about? I mean, our Papa said, "You go in shahoy muflim shneim." We're talking about Beidah zayin Rosh Hashivas. The Kohen HaMashiach was a Rosh Hashiva, and there was a Rosh Hashiva in the Bezdin. So both. So each one paskin, and each one did the Aveda, but they did the Aveda together. So if he sinned on his own and he paskin on his own, then he's only miskapeh b'fnei atzmai. That's talking about if the Kohen Gadol, who was a mufla, sat in one place, made his own psak, that chaylev is mutter, and Bezdin made a wrong psak with a Rosh Hashiva, that chaylev is mutter, and then since they were in two different places, then the Kohen Gadol has to bring his own carbon. And it's talking about the passing on two different isurim. What kind of two different isurim? So he says here you can have isun chaylev al hadakim, and then the chaylev abachasa al hakerev. Dakim is more the intestines. It's more like by the kidney, the fats. With that we learn out from an extra vav. Yeah, the tzedaikim don't agree to that. And by the fats that's on the kerev, that's befedish of machas al hakerev. That says befedish, so the tzedaikim do agree. So it's two different isurim. So if it's two different isurim and two different places, then each one has the Kohen Gadol has to bring his own carbon. You're saying because they're sitting in two places, that's why they have to bring two separate kabbanis. The Kohen Gadol has to bring his own carbon. Even if they both, the Kohen Gadol was sitting together with the Rosh Hashiva from the Bezdin made up psak. Like even the Kamayra betrei Yisuri, since they're passing in two separate Yisurim, it's a ched of its own. Says Gemara Pshit, it's a pashta zach. Who, if the Kohen HaMashiach gave a head to Bechela, Beheru hey Mavitz Yachabim, and the Bezdin was mated the aved of worshiping idols, of bowing to idols, then for sure that the Kohen Gadol brings his own for his sin. The Hachalukim, the Tamayo, because they're two separate Isurim, two separate Psukim. There's a pasuk that talks about the Isa of Avodah Zarah, and there's a separate pasuk that talks about the Isa of Chelev, Vachalukim. So the Kohen HaMashiach and the Tzibur are different b'kabanis, in the kabanis that they bring on these Isurim. By the Kohen HaMashiach, he brings the par on a shegeg that he gave by the Chelev. The Hein and the Tzibur are forgiven by par v'soyer. They have to bring a par v'soyer. So he says, the Kamaisi honey soyer, because Bezdin brings a soyer in addition to the par. Mashain came by the Chelev, you only bring a par. By Avidas Yechavim, in addition to the par, you have to bring a soyer. So it's different kabbanis. Why is it different carbon? Chelev only brings a par. And by Avidas Yechavim, in addition to the par, you bring a soyer. The huloi maisi, and here by the chalev, he doesn't bring only a par. He doesn't bring a sar. The kol shekei, how much more so if he was heard of Neyatzmei who he was matabavitz gechavim beheim bechalev the chalukim bekavod the same legamri, which is a complete different kavod. The who seira when if the kohen Hamashiach gave a false psak on Avodah Zarah, then he only brings a sorry. The inu babezdim mevim par. They bring a par helam dava. But when it comes to the chalev that they paskin erroneously, Elohu bechalev mechasas hakerev. Only we're going to say the kohen Hamashiach paskin about the chalev that's mechasas hakerev. The hein and the bezdim bechalev shaladakim, which we learn out from a limud from extra vav. Mao, what's going to be the din? Me, I mean, afagav the kavan shava. Should we say, oh, the bring, even though it's two different chalev, right? So it's like two different isurim, but the carbon is the same. So keeping the b'tei koya yikasu, since we're learning out from two different psukim, hapligim b'tamayu, so they have different reasoning. One you learn out from hamachas al hakerev, and one we learn out from extra vav. That one that's machas al hadak, and we learn out from extra vav. So maybe I should say it's two separate isurim. So the kohen gadol should have to bring his own carbon, or perhaps shem chalev echadu. Since we're talking about chalev, it's the same name, so it should bring together with the tzibur. If you're going to follow the shnit that we go according to the same name of Isur, so then it's miskapa imatzibur. How about hu bechalev v'heim b'dam? What's if the kohen Mashiach was mata chalev and Bezdin was mata dam? Ma'adin. What's going to be the din? Do we say b'tamayu hapligin? Listen, they're two separate psukim. One is a Isa Dam, one is Isa Chalev. Separate, no. Separate psukim for the Isurim. Like Seichel Dam, and one is that you're not allowed to eat the Chalev. So the Tamayu, the reasoning of the Isa is different psukim. So therefore they bring a separate carbon. Not, or since they have in common that they both bring a par, so I'd say Basa Karmazlina will go according to the carbon that they bring, and since they bring the same carbon, so the Kohen Mashiach can sich verlassen from Tzibuz Aveira with the par that the Bezdin brings, and they'll be mechuppah. So take we learned in the Mishnah Shem doesn't chayav machir lebat mitzvos l'kai mitzvos. Bezdin is not going to be chayav a par only if they weren't mevatel the ganze mitzvah, only if they were mevatel part of a mitzvah. From where do we know that not chayav achir lebat mitzvos l'kai mitzvos? Said Gemara Kedamim B'idach Perkin. Like we said in the previous Vedic, it says Menelam Dova. So we say Shlos Mem. When you have a Shlos Mem, you use the Mem for both words, Menelam and Midova. It's as if it says Menelam Midova. That it was concealed from the thing. From the thing that means only part of the Isur. He was Mavatal. Dova v'loy kol haguf. Only a part of the Dova, but not the whole Isur. So too by Mashiach, we said that he cannot be mevatel the whole Isur in order to be chayiv a par. From where do we know this? Din by Kohen Mashiach. It says la'ash masa'am that the Kohen Mashiach has the din as a tzibur. Harei Mashiach tzibur, and just like by a tzibur, you cannot uproot the whole Isur. So too by the Kohen Gadol, not by Avodas Yechavim. Bezdin is not chayiv till. But only if the mevatel part of the Isa is chaver, but not the ganze Isa. From where do we know this? So the Tanna Rabbanan learned Lafi sheyatza avedis kechavim lodun beatzma. Since the aveda of avedis kechavim, right, is excluded from the parhelam davashal tzibur, that it has its own din because it brings in addition to the par, it brings a soyer. So it's not like any ordinary Aveda, because by any ordinary Aveda, Bezdin only brings a par and it's mechaper for the whole tzibur. Here you have to bring in addition to a par, sorry, so Aveda Zot is different. So So I would have thought Aveda Zot, it's such a different Aveda that even if you were oiked the whole Aveda, the Bezdin made a psak that was oiked, Aveda Zot is mutter, I would have thought you still could bring a carbon. So that's why it says Nemakam Me'ene. It says by Hados Bezin the word Me'ene. I'm sorry, by Avidazot it says Me'ene. By Pahelam Dava it says Me'ene. Ma'alahalam, just like by Pahelam Dava, it's Bezdin. It's talking about by Shigagas Bezdin. Bezdin had to make, had to be a Shoyeg. Avkan, also by Vetzikachab Nami, Bezdin, meaning that Bezdin made you have to have that Bezdin should be a Shoyeg besides the people doing a Maisa Shoyeg. Once you already learn out that, Malahalam Dava, just like over there, only a part of the Aveda, they made a psak in the Isur, but not the whole Isur. Bloi kol aguf, not to uproot. The psak that they gave wasn't to be mata the Isur legami. Avkan nami, Dava bloi kol aguf. So to here, it was only part of the Isur, not the whole Isur. Stop.